So the idea is it's not a very long presentation because I knew it would be a small enough group, so I'm happy to take questions at the end, okay? If you want to stop me mid-flow, fine, but let's see if I get through in a rapid fashion the information, because it's just trying to dump information onto you, and then I'll take individual questions. I've spoken to some of you already downstairs at the desk at the end, okay? All right. I think we'll get started, because I'm not so sure it'll be an onslaught of a big crowd to come in to join us, but if they do, we can talk to them at the end. So welcome everybody. My name is Donal. We have a little bit of a program led by the Science and Engineering College about say it with a name. So we're trying to give the pronunciation for all of our names for those who are not familiar with particularly the Irish version of the fada, lengthen the O. So when I travel, I go to the US and they call me Donal. I go to France and they call me Donal because they put different emphasis on different syllables. So I'm a Donal, right? And my role currently is as the Dean of Graduate Studies. So full disclosure, I'm a chemist, right? So I'm from science background originally, professor in chemistry. But for now, for the last 3 years, I'm doing what's called Dean of Graduate Studies, which means that my role is responsible for setting policy, overseeing policy implementation, and the rules around how we treat graduate students, mostly research students. They're the most complex. Thought is taught, right? It's fairly structured. So mostly research students. So I'm here to talk to you about funding your PhD. And before we talk about that, if you're interested in why you should come here to do a PhD and why we think that Galway is an interesting place to do research in, here's some about us figures thrown in there just to give you an example of why we think we're good at or you should come join us to make us better at doing research, right? So these are some metrics that are around research, okay? So research, if you want to try capture it, it's very debatable, very difficult about how you measure success in research, but there are some measures like income generated to fund your research, like outputs generated in terms of publishing research, like impacts of the outputs that you generate, like changing policy, changing procedures, changing technology, generating new technology, developing companies, et cetera, et cetera. So that's some of the details here, right? And depending on your area of interest, you may well be interested in and will contribute to some of those. Hopefully all, but at least in terms of research and research degrees, our primary consideration is generating new knowledge, right? And new knowledge is only good once you tell others about it. So that means generating and publishing new knowledge, okay? So all of what we do, not just our research, is informed by our strategic plan values around 4 values of respect, excellence, openness, and sustainability. Cut across everything, right? Including the research. So there are things, these are all 4 things that we think everybody should live while they're with the university, staff or student or engagement, stakeholder engagement, okay? And it's like apple pie, right? So we should, of course, respect each other. We should treat each other with respect, and that means giving respect in terms of how we support each other both financially and philosophically and in research, right? We, of course, should strive to be excellent. We should be open, and that's all to do with how we welcome people in, but also how we tell people about us, and open access to research, for example, in research. And, of course, we need to think about how we sustain ourselves and the environment in which we operate, including our planet, okay? So one of the things that we like to think about as well is that all of these values will reinforce our distinctiveness. Now, distinctiveness is a bit of a tough handle to get in a university that's up for the public good, that is as comprehensive as we are, compared to other comprehensive universities like UCD, like UCC, like Trinity College Dublin and this island, and what does Galway offer that they don't, for example. So it may well boil down to, in your particular research areas, how you find something or someone who is distinctive in your research areas that is not available or may not be a comparator in other comprehensive universities, okay? So we're here to talk about you want to do a PhD. We said we focus on PhDs. And this is the key challenge, is you should only do a PhD if you are vested in getting there, in the marathon that is the deep dive into a topic that you obviously must be and should be interested in and proficient in asking and answering the questions, but also convincing others that it is of interest to them. So it's not just about you, okay? So It's for what we call high-achieving, dynamic individuals who must have passion for their subject and the drive to get to where, and we'll talk about the end part at the end, right? Where you have a doctorate, right? Who have an appetite for the research, who have the capacity to intellectually contribute to generating new knowledge. So one of the key concerns I always have when I teach undergraduates is, and they want to try something new, particularly in science, it's a bit difficult, in engineering. The challenge is, what do you know what's new if you don't know what we already think we know? Yeah? So we spend a lot of our time at undergraduates trying to teach and learn what we think we know before we can let you loose on trying something new. A PhD is all about trying to then understand what we think we know and doing something new, so new knowledge. Okay? In general, so our full-time PhD, we say it's a 4-year program. Okay, that's not to say you must take 4 years, right? But it's a 4-year program and how it's set up. That's on average what we say it should be, and actually you should hopefully complete before 4 years, right? Because all we do is we will fund you for 4 years. Most of the funders will only fund you for 4 years, right? If they fund you at all. We'll come to funding in a second, right? Or if you want to do it part-time, we say it's a 6-year program, right? Although we have some part-time students that spend much shorter than that, and those who spend much longer than that, if you're interested in the metrics, okay? But that's what the program says, a bit like we try to structure taught programs, 4-year honours bachelor's, BSc, 3 years honours bachelor of commerce. We don't do global experience, for example, right? So it's a 4-year or a 6-year full-time or part-time program, the way it's set up. If you wish to do a research degree in the Irish system, and in Galway in particular, you have to do the old dance of finding a partner to matchmake with you who will support you in doing the research, lead you and guide you in doing the research, and that person is what we call a supervisor, right? Who is the key person who will supervise your research topic, tell you where you're maybe going at a tangent, tell you where you're going wrong or how you will go right, and learning themselves in the process about the research, because at the end you will be the expert, not they, right? But it should be somebody who's expert in and adjacent to the expertise in your particular topic. A supervisor, or supervisors. You can have more than one, okay? So the first step if you wish to do a PhD is, before you do a lot more work and expend a lot of work developing your own research, thinking that your research is all very good and worthwhile, and then not finding anybody to take you on, is to find a supervisor, okay? So we try to help in this, where we have a particular website, sorry, a bit blurry. So if you look up courses and you go into PhD and Research Masters in the University of Galway, there is a Find a Supervisor button to hit, right? Hit the button, it will bring you to here, right? So this is a Find a Supervisor PhD project, right? And this is the top part of the screen, and the bottom part of the screen looks like this. So it is a list, and I'm always envious of Florence. Florence is one of our colleagues in microbiology. She comes up first alphabetically, so it's listed alphabetically by surname. My name is Leech, so I come way down the middle, right? But we have built it so that you have, so for Florence, for example, you have Florence's own description of her research interests by theme and sub-theme. So we built it by theme and sub-theme. But the beauty of it is you can search, so it's searchable. Okay? So you can search by, if you know the supervisor's name, for example, you can search by their name. Or more interestingly for you guys is you can search by keyword. Okay? So you pick a keyword. Obviously I would pick chemistry or electrochemistry or electroanalytical chemistry or bioelectroanalytical chemistry. That's my deep dive. So I'm not just a chemist, I'm an electrochemist, interested in the bio and interested in analysis. So if you want to talk to me about what my ideal PhD it will be bioelectroanalytical chemistry. Right? You pick your own deep dive. Okay? Put in the keyword and you can search. So I put in biosensors because I know that will find a particular person I'm very interested in. Right? So biosensors finds me. Everybody needs to look for me. Right? No. So you can search by keyword. You get the idea? So I've talked to some of you already downstairs and you're saying, well, what's the first step? The first step if you want to do a PhD in the University of Galway is you need somebody who will bet on you for your research, for your topic, who will be willing to spend their time, right? So it's an effort for them as well, their time, and be vested in and interested enough in you and your research, or it may well even be their own research, that they will say to you, well, this is something I think I'm interested in, are you interested in it? And it varies by discipline and by subject. Right? Some require you to spend a lot of time to think about what you would like to do. Others, particularly in the sciences and engineering and medicine, you're joining a team of researchers, and they say, well, this is what I'm interested in. Here's an element of it. You seem like you've got the background to do this element of it in research. Come join us. Okay? So there's an alternate way to get into finding people in the university if you don't want to go through the find a supervisor route, and it is through the research office. So in research office, if you find our people, our research and people, you can find the schools. So, you know, we call our units schools, right? And you can search by school the listing of academics by school. Okay? So it's an alternative. Or, of course, you can go back to the old-fashioned, newfangled way of just asking a search engine. Right? University of Galway biosensors. I wonder who that would find. Right? Okay? So that's the find a supervisor. So there's two key things to think about if you're doing a PhD. One is your research and how to do that and with whom. But the second, and the title of the topic is, who will pay for it? Okay? So we'll talk a little bit about who will pay for it. There are really three ways that we can have a deal for you to do a PhD in the university. The first is, and the most difficult deal, is that you, off your own bat, on your own volition, independently say, it's such a value to me, I will pay for the full cost of doing a PhD, be it 4 years full-time, or more likely, for most of our self-funded students, are 6 years part-time, because they may have work that helps them pay for themselves while they pay the fees and their living costs while they're doing a registered program of learning called a PhD, a doctorate, right? How many people want to take that route? Probably few of you. But it is a available route, and there are some, particularly professions, who do that, okay? So that's the first, and it is a default, right? So if you can't find someone else to pay for it, and you really, really have your heart set on doing a PhD, that's the answer, right? So the second is you find somebody to pay for it who has a vested interest in you bettering yourself academically to do a PhD, and that could be a current or a potential employer. Again, difficult, although that happens, particularly with a lot of our foreign direct investment, large companies where they have invested in you as an employee, and they say, we will fund your X doctorate, for example, if you will work with us for Y, right? Be an indentured slave with them after they pay for some of your costs of a PhD, for example. Okay? So that's the second way. Again, few schemes to do that. Actually, the Irish Research Council has its own scheme called an employer-based scheme, which is open soon, okay? Where if they have employers that will fund you to do research. Okay, the Irish Research Council. I'll talk about that later on. So the third is that somebody else pays for your research. That's not an employer, and it's not you. Okay? Most of these payments in this country are set up as what we call scholarships, as opposed to employment arrangements. Okay? So they are scholarships for students to study, to do a doctorate as a program. Okay? All right, so somebody else pays your fees and makes a contribution, because it's a scholarship, it's tax exempt, so that's a benefit, although there's a cost to that, and that it's not a salary, right? So you're not paying PAYE, but that means you're not paid social insurance costs either. And some people outside will say to you that that's a prospect that you shouldn't sign up for. That's up to you, okay? So for now, in this country, most of our PhD students are on scholarships, which is a tax-exempt stipend, okay? Cool. So who would do this? One of the schemes that do this is us ourselves, us, the university. We do, like other funders, and we talk about other funders, we do a scheme that is a competitive scheme for if you have a supervisor you found, so that's the first thing, that we say you can apply to us and we will evaluate your application in a pool of others. So I'll give you some numbers. There's probably about 150 applicants for about 20 scholarships every year. Right? So high demand, very competitive. So do the math, 20 out of 150. Okay? So very competitive in terms of funding you. So the scheme is that it's called the Hardiman Scholarship Scheme after the first university librarian, James Hardiman. Just if you're interested in the why, you can look it up. It is that we will fund the PhD starting in September 2024, where we will pay the fees, or the fees are waived effectively, which is a benefit depending upon if you're an EU or non-EU classified citizen, is a benefit of about 5.5 to 6 grand, or 14.5 to 15 grand, depending upon what the fee category is, right? So that's a benefit that you're getting. And we will also pay you a living contribution. So it's not a salary, it's not a wage, it's a contribution to your living costs of, for now, 19,000. Now, some of you may have heard that our main funders, Science Foundation Ireland and the Irish Research Council, have said they will up that to 22,000 in January. Some of us are a bit disappointed it wasn't more, but that's what they've said. And what I can say is that we will try, so I don't yet have approval, because of course we're not given any extra money, the universities, to up the stipend, but I'm going to challenge the colleges to bring our Hardiman Scholarship up to that as well. Don't have it yet, don't quote me on it. Hopefully we'll get there by the time September 2024 rocks around, and if I'm still in the role, my challenge is to go back to university anytime there's an increase in the national funders to try to match that by our internal funding, okay? So you can quote me on that. That's what I'll try. Can't guarantee success, okay? Because it's money, and money doesn't grow on trees. I know, I grow trees, right? So, okay. So what it does is it says, we will fund and pay for your fees on your behalf and pay you a contribution to your living costs of, for now, 19,000 per year. So it's not a lot, so you should go in with your eyes open that it is a time period of 4 years. These are for full time, 4 years, and maybe even longer. And the longer you won't get any payment, so year 5 or year 6, you don't get any payment until you go into year 5 and year 6. So it's a 4-year funding agreement to support you while you're doing the research. Got it? Cool. So what I'll do is I'll spend a couple of minutes going through what this looks like, because believe it or not, we mirror what most other funders ask you to submit to them in the bid for funding by them. And I'll talk about some of them in the end, right? So what's it look like? There is an application. It'll be launched, as I said, in December, for a deadline in February for starting in September 24. The application requests from you and your supporter and people who know you to submit an application form which has a research statement, right, and a CV, and a supervisor, and referees, okay? So we ask for you to put in details. How's it gone? Here we go. We'll try to get it to go ahead. Oh, back. Yeah, details in the application form of you, right? If you're interested, find people who've done this already. Find people who've been successful already. I don't know if you know any researchers in the university. If you're in the university now, any of those people who are probably leading you through tutoring sessions or laboratory demonstrations are probably PhD researchers being paid to teach, right? So being paid to teach. Ask them how they got the PhD scholarship, okay? Here's one of our graduates. He's now actually in the UK, Atif Shahzad. That's what he says about it, okay? We ask you to submit, so just more details of what we ask you, to submit what your qualifications are, what your education is, and how you rank. You may not know that, but you can say that you know you're in the top quartile or top 10%, for example. We'll check this if we say we fund you and you are to be admitted, okay? So how you rank in terms of your education details and any research you have done as part of your education already or your experience already, right? So what's your capacity to do research? Do you have any evidence of your capacity to do research, okay? Others will ask that in other funding schemes as well. I'll be patient. I think it's going to come. Yeah, so we also ask you to tell us about you. Why are you interested in doing a PhD? This is challenging to some people, particularly Irish people. We tend to hide our light under a bush, right? You know, so be strong. Tell us, why do you want to do a PhD? Why is it of interest to you? So we will be interested in you, right? So what's your background like? What are your areas you're interested in? What kind of research question, if you have an idea about it or talk to the supervisor about it, what kind of research question will you ask and how will you answer that question? That's research, right? Why are you thinking of doing a PhD and how suitable do you think you are? So tell us what you think to a PhD, right? You then, for now, the process is, we're talking about whether we remove this. The Irish Research Council has removed the referee, but for now we require you to get 2 letters of recommendation from referees. If we still have this by December, we likely will, make sure you pick a referee who will say good things about you. Please. No point picking a referee who will say, that Donal, sure, he was a waster. Wouldn't fund him. Right? So find someone who will say good things about you. Right?
Do they have to be from within the university or from...
No. We were 2 referees. Again, you pick them to suit the scheme, right? The scheme is to do research, so maybe and hopefully they will be able to comment on your capacity to do research. Right? So probably an academic should be one of them at least, but then if you've been in employment and you've shown the capacity to work, right, and to engage and to be diligent and to be independent, then that's also an attribute that is required to do research, right? Okay? And finally, your supervisor doesn't need to write much for yet. They just need to say, yes, I agree. I agree to supervise Donal, even though I know he's a waster. Okay? It is competitive, as I said, about 150 people for about 20 slots, and it is valuable, right? Even though we would like it to have a bigger value in terms of a stipend payment to you should you be successful, it's about, when you count it all up, if you're particularly coming from a non-EU country, with non-EU status, it's about €150,000 investment. Other countries pay that full investment to the university to pay for you, and that's why other countries have better benefits, for example. That's an argument we could have with government, right? I'm already having, right? So, usually mid-February deadline, that's the details, and the email is HR Scholar, right? So, that's an example of a scheme that will open soon. What I'll do is talk to you about a few others, right? So, other opportunities for funding. If you're interested in, you see this button here, scholarships, right? If you click on that in the PhD and Research Masters, so here's where, actually down here, find a supervisor, search now, programs here, and then scholarships in between, right? So we have, why is it going like that? We have set up a mechanism to publish through HR, and it's clunky, but it's there, scholarships that are available that supervisors have their own money. So supervisors, and sometimes like this happens to me, sometimes it doesn't, will ask for money to do research from funding agencies, say, yeah, great idea, off you go, here's €200,000 to fund your research, and with that €200,000 they can afford to buy a PhD student, right? And they will advertise this purchase in various venues, one of which is here, right? So under jobs, so it is under jobs, although it's not a job, right? Under research on our website, in this here, this rubric, if you click it, it comes up PhD scholarships, right? So it's imperfect. I tried to get it fixed, but it's imperfect. So you have to do 2 clicks to get there, right? If you look under PhD scholarships, again, the computer's thinking a bit. Hopefully we'll get there. Yeah, so now, so we've clicked PhD scholarships. Here's the current ones that I just put up last week, all right? So these are supervisors who have found money from funders to do research, and they've said, okay, I want to fund a PhD student rather than a research assistant or a postdoctoral researcher to do this research, okay? So that's one way of finding it. And also, so this is under the same website, so research scholarships, at the bottom of the link, other scholarship schemes. So the colleges sometimes, so keep an eye on the colleges, sometimes if they have money, and there are some colleges that do and some colleges don't, they have money, they will make a bet also that they wish to fund a PhD student or a few. Right? When I was Dean of the College of Science, many moons ago, we used to fund a dozen or so PhD scholarships because we had a bit of money. Then the crash happened. And then, anyway, so we still fund a few, right? So keep an eye on that, and they usually are advertised around about February, March, okay, a little bit later, okay? Or talk to the colleges, email them. Say, will you be funding PhD students? Open call this year. A lot of them have tended not to do an open call. So of the 4 colleges, some are now funding PhD students aligned to supervisors. So back to the previous page, right, themselves, okay? And then there are others. So these are the interesting ones. I hope you are all aware of this one. This is the main funder of individual research scholarships to individuals in the country, the Irish Research Council. Deadline has passed for that. I hope some of you are in the pot. If you're not, you have to wait for the deadline next year for funding for 2025. That's the cycle, okay? This portal here is a very interesting portal. Look it up, Your Access. It is the EU-wide portal for advertising all funded research positions, so all research positions across the EU, right? So not just PhDs, but postdoctoral researchers and research assistants. So look up your access. You'll find opportunities across the whole EU. We advertise, I know because I'm the one who puts it up, right? So we advertise funded PhD scholarships there as well. Okay? And then there are a few other places that fund research PhDs depending upon your area. If you're lucky enough that your area aligns with one of these funders, you may well have opportunity to bid for funding through them as well. The best place to get advice on this is with the supervisors. So it all circles back to the start. Find a supervisor. Okay? So there is, nationally, for example, the National University of Ireland, which is our parent home, right? All of the colleges, UCD, UCC, Maynooth, and us, we're all part of the National University of Ireland. That's where you get a degree from at the end, right? So they have NUI awards, few, right? Teagasc funds agricultural and research, right? Teagasc is our funder of agricultural research. They have what's called a Walsh Scholarship, right? The Marine Institute funds marine-based research. They have what's called a Cullen Scholarship, okay? The Health Research Board funds research. They don't fund as many individual PhDs now. They usually fund cohort-based research, right? And the Irish Cancer Society also funds some research, right? Lastly, there is a beast that's called an SFI Research Centre for Training. So Centre for Research Training and Centres for Doctoral Training. So look up this SFI. SFI is the other major researcher, actually is the biggest by amount, funder of research in the country, not the IRC. It's Science Foundation Ireland. It funds large-scale, cohort-based research centres and doctoral training centres. That cycle's finishing, actually, so it may well be the last year that that is operational unless we get funding to do more, okay? But have a look at them as well. And they're in various areas. I think one of you was talking about genomics and genetics. So there is, in the University of Galway, an SFI Centre for Genetics and Genomics, run by Cathal Shoiga, right? Okay, all right. Ask potential supervisors, though. So going back to the start, if you're going to ask me, and then people downstairs asking what's the key thing, find a supervisor, find money. If it's your own, brilliant. If it's not, put your hand in somebody else's pocket and tell them to bet on you. Okay? It's a risk. Hopefully it'll pay off for you and them. Okay? I think that's it. Is it? Again, it's thinking. Okay, so additionally, so again, the government can support, and they brought back the SUSI grants for research students, so they killed it for a while when we were broke. Now it's back. So if you have limited means, you may well get some government funding while you're a PhD student. And that's just the revenue code for tax exemption for scholarships for all students, not just PhD students. So if you get a scholarship, it's tax exempt. And finally, one of the things I did when I was first appointed to be Dean of Graduate Studies, I flipped from when we required our PhD students to teach for free as part of their program, as part of their learning and learning how to teach. We now pay all of those who teach in the university for teaching, okay? And what's called the graduate teaching assistantship, like what pertains in most international jurisdictions, okay? So you can earn some additional money if you are asked to and agree to and engage in teaching while you are a graduate student, okay? So, last thing, don't forget the prize. The prize is a doctorate. And a doctorate says you are developing knowledge through original research. That's the prize, right? 4 to 6 years, sometimes longer. And it's an individual journey. We try to put in structures to support you as an individual, but it's an individual journey. Different to, even though they're individual journeys that the undergraduate and postgraduate taught, but it is a really specific individual journey, specific to each doctoral student and their supervisor or supervisors, okay? Our programs for PhD are what are called structured programs, and that's where we allow you to capture some of your learning, align to your research in modules. They're not always like a taught program, taught modules. There are things there like dissemination of research, so publishing a paper, conference attendance at seminars, managing and organizing conferences. That you can capture as learning. And the benefit of that is it goes in your transcript. And that's something then you can bring to any prospective employer that beyond the research and your thesis, which is the key goal, you can say, look, I have skills that I've developed in inter, multi, or specific disciplinary skills that's on my transcript. Okay? So Sinead, go raibh míle maith agah. I hope I've given you some useful information. Ask questions, come down and see me at the desk. I have to go down to the desk sometime soon because maybe there's crowds down there looking to talk to me. No, only joking. So ask questions. Any way I can help, let me know. Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one is, if you're doing a PhD with a scholarship, say like Hardeman or IRC, are there restrictions on outside employment, like working outside the university? What would happen if you are employed in a job outside? Would you have to give up that job for the duration?
Sure. So all I can say is what we know and what we control, right? So the university as a potential employer of, and then knows that you are funded by us, right, through us, is we say that ideally you should not. So we put a limit on the graduate teaching assistantship of 250 hours a year to try to protect you from yourself, although you know you want to earn to live. We don't get to decide on what you do outside, and we used to try. We used to say, no, you can only do 40 hours of work, but that's very difficult, right? So the answer is, it's up to you, but be aware if you don't engage with your research at the expected level, it will take you longer.
Okay, yeah,
right?
I tried to look on the internet.
Revenue may well have a view though. So the last thing to say is that revenue gives you a tax-exempt scholarship on the presumption that you're under full-time instruction, engaged with the full-time PhD, right? If revenue at any stage audit you and look back and see, well, Donal was earning 50 grand in a job in Medtronic and another 30 grand a year being a taxi driver, and he's getting a scholarship of 19 grand a year, they will ask you questions. So that's revenue, that's not us. Okay?
Because I tried to look on the internet and all of the plans for America. I think about Ireland as well.
No, so because the challenge is we don't capture external employment by all of our research students because they're students, right? We only know what we employ them to do, and there are limits of what we employ them to do. My predecessor put in that we would say that there's a maximum of X, but I don't put that in because I can't measure it. I don't want to measure it. Okay. But it's a business decision between you and your supervisor. And don't forget, so it's not just your supervisor. Every year you are assessed by a panel. So if you look at what happens when you are a PhD student, you're assessed by a panel on how you're progressing in your research. Right? Yeah. So they may decide in an assessment that you're not progressing in research, and that may be because of you're doing stuff other than your research. So that's the complicated answer.
Yeah. The other thing I had is when you're picking a supervisor, you know, you might, is it possible to say to have maybe a co-supervisor that could be from another university?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes, and would that other university have to be in Ireland? Because
no.
There might be, say for my topic, there might be some experts in the area that I've come across maybe in the UK or Queen's in Belfast.
Sure, absolutely. So our system permits that. The challenge is, will your potential supervisor that you pick here agree to that?
Okay.
So again, that's a decision that is made at admission stage, or it actually can be made halfway through if you find, for example, let's say you were admitted under my supervision and your research is in my area, but then you want to explore something outside of my area. I may well say, well, now we need to go find a co-supervisor that has that expertise that can help you in that area because it's not my specific expertise. So it can happen midway through as well. Okay, but that should be something that is, first and foremost, decided with your primary supervisor. It has to be one who is responsible, and if you're coming to University of Galway, that is an academic in the University of Galway, your primary supervisor. Co-supervision is permitted. Co-supervision outside of the University of Galway is permitted. Oh, you said two?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Any other questions? No, go on. Yeah.
No, my final one is also employment again. You know, what is other employment within the university okay? Because, you know, so I sometimes do work, say, as a note taker. I can't say too much. Like, I sometimes do work, say, on campus as a note taker for students.
So it depends who the employer is. So again, so we're trying to have full sight of all of those opportunities so that we can protect you from, again, what we say. So all I have control of for now is the graduate teaching assistant policy, which I said has a maximum in it. We have a job of work to do to see what other roles we employ our students in, and particularly our postgraduate students who are funded. So it might change, is all I'm going to say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Maria.
I'm already postdoctoral researcher in here. I'm visiting researcher.
Yes.
My university funded me, which is from Turkey.
Yes.
And I am looking for some contribution already. I want to connect, which is the ongoing research project. I'm already postdoctoral.
Yes?
Maybe I can contribute. How can I connect them? How can I?
So if you wish to be a supervisor yourself, is this?
I have already a supervisor. Our research already complete. I want to extend my postdoctoral.
So there's two. So you have a separate. So again, what I get is you want to find out what are the mechanisms for funding postdoctoral research.
I already applied some funding program for
Yes.
IRC.
IRC, fantastic.
Digiplus, Lero.
Yes. SFI, yeah.
Marie Curie.
Yes.
Already.
Yes. So you know all that,
Yeah,
right?
I know all of them, but I want to maximize my chance.
Yes.
To be here to extend my.
Sure. Sure. It sounds like you've done your homework already and you know already all of the places. Maybe come and talk to me later on to see if I can think of some that you don't already know, but you have hit the major funders. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
We already visit you. And
Yeah. But I didn't realize you're a postdoc. So I think
Yes,
yeah.
already.
So I can chat. Maybe because these are mostly for looking to do a PhD. So maybe we'll talk later on or after if there's any other questions on PhDs. No? So it's an interesting question about what's beyond the PhD. Okay, thanks very much, guys. Good luck with everything you do. Enjoy it. Have fun. I usually have it at the end. So if you're not having fun, I don't see why you should be doing it, right? So have fun.